What is Medicare, Medicaid, and how does that work with the Indian Health Service? All of this is why the cost of health care is an issue in the partisan fight about how to fund the federal government. How did we get here? Breaking history and the complex debate about healthcare. This week, I received a letter from my health insurance company. Instructions on the envelope: open immediately. That's never good news, right? I figured it was a record of a payment to a physician, or perhaps even a denial. Nope, the company let me know it was pulling out of the market. So now I have to find a new insurance provider during the open enrollment period. I'm on Medicare, so it's either a supplemental plan or the private version, Medicare Advantage. According to National Public Radio, millions of people are in the same boat. This same company is not only bailing on Medicare Advantage, it's also giving up its Affordable Care Act plans. There are three reasons for all of this: rising medical costs, medical inflation is another way to say it, reduced payments from the federal government, Medicare and Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act. And the owner, in this case CVS, thinks it can make more money in other healthcare markets. How did we get here? Why is health insurance so complicated? What is Medicare, Medicaid, and how does that work with the Indian Health Service? All of this is why the cost of healthcare is an issue in the partisan fight about how to fund the federal government. Philosophically, Democrats see healthcare as a human right, while Republicans want the market to rule and set the costs, not the government. Let's break it down, throw in some history, and see what's possible beyond the current debate. This is Breaking History. And as they say in this digital space, like, share, and subscribe. I'm Mark Trahant. I have some history here. During the debate about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, I had a fellowship from the Kaiser Family Foundation. I spent a year digging into the weeds. I was especially interested in how we think about the Indian Health Service, a government-run agency, compared to the health delivery system for other Americans. And well, it's really complicated. Let me answer some of the questions I raised. Why is health insurance so complicated? It all started with the great American healthcare mistake. This country should have never tied our healthcare to jobs. It was an accident, a way to avoid price and wage controls during World War II. No other country in the world has such a bizarre system. And it makes no sense to let our employers make decisions about our healthcare. All the basic stuff: what kind of coverage we buy, what should be included, who our provider networks are, and which doctors we use. This mistake let Americans pretend that healthcare did not have a cost. It was a silent compensation, and for a long time, it wasn't even measured by employees. Now, employer-sponsored insurance is declining. The percentage of Americans who receive health insurance through employers dropped from about 7 out of 10 workers to just over half, according to several studies. The main point of the Affordable Care Act was to let people buy plans directly at a reasonable and often subsidized cost. This is the exchanges that you hear so much about. Indian country has not benefited from this system. One study showed that even when employer plans were common, only about 4 out of 10 Indigenous families were covered. What is Medicare and Medicaid? People confuse the two all the time. Medicare is the national insurance program for people over 65 years old. It includes a federal plan, traditional Medicare, or one of the several private plans, Medicare Advantage, sold by private insurance companies. Medicaid is a means-tested program that gives access to health insurance for families that don't make enough money to buy insurance. It uses a formula tied to what the federal government calls the federal poverty level. Nearly 73 million people have Medicaid, and Medicaid also covers seniors who have limited savings, and that helps for paying for assisted living facilities or for people with disabilities. I should add, Medicaid is a state-federal partnership, so it's the states that set many of the rules about how the program will work and contribute to that funding. The Indian Health Service is the smallest federal health program. It costs about $8.1 billion a year. It's the only federal health care program based on treaties made with tribal nations. Many in Indian country call this prepaid health care, but it's also a ruse. The United States government has never come close to fully funding the Indian health care needs. It's worth noting that all three of these programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and its companion Children's Health Insurance Program, as well as the Indian Health Service, are funded during the government shutdown. That brings us to the partisan debate about health insurance. First, and I know this sounds harsh, there has never been a Republican healthcare insurance plan. For more than a decade, there has been a promise to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. But Republican policymakers cannot agree on what that should look like. Instead, in the big, beautiful bill, the Republicans propose reforms that cut funding for some of the subsidies that started with the Affordable Care Act. Two examples. New restrictions on Medicaid would result in tens of millions of people being cut from the program. Some of this is the new work requirements, and there's that philosophical divide again. Republicans see Medicaid as a cushy benefit, not a human right. So any able-bodied person should have to work for such a gift. The big, beautiful bill also requires states to pay more, and many won't. They will simply cut back on benefits and make the program smaller in their states. The legislation as a whole is projected to cause around 11 million people to become uninsured, among whom are about 5.5 to 6 million people are projected to lose Medicaid coverage through the work requirement, according to a recent report by the Brookings Institute. That's the backdrop for this fight in Congress. The Democrats don't have a lot of power right now. They don't control the White House, the Supreme Court, or either House of Congress. But the Senate rules, at least for now, require 60 votes to temporarily fund the government. That's the only leverage the Democrats have. So what's on their wish list? Democrats want an extension of the tax credits under the Affordable Care Act. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that without this provision, the ranks of the uninsured will grow by 4.2 million people. Overall, the average enrollee of insurance through the Affordable Care Act will see their premiums double if these tax credits go away. The bills are coming due now because open enrollment begins in most states on November 1st. This is a wildly popular demand. Kaiser Family Foundation reports that 3/4 of those polled want the tax credits to continue. The Republicans and even President Trump say that there should be a negotiation over healthcare costs, just not now. But even that is up for debate. Last week, Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene said that the tax credits must be extended.
And to allow Democrats to have some sort of moral high ground on this issue because they're the only ones talking about it, I think is a major failure from the Republican Party. And I'm not going to stand there and just keep talking the talking points when my own adult children can hardly afford health insurance premiums, when everyone in my district, it's the #1 issue that I hear about day in and day out, not just people on the ACA, but people that have private insurance as well. And I think it's something that we have to talk about. And I don't see why the government needs to be shut down. I really don't. I believe that if Republicans learn to govern and wield power, they can use the nuclear option in the Senate. They can open up the government. We can get back to work for the American people, and Republicans can solve this problem that is a very big problem that we can't ignore.
The tax credits are only the first part of this larger healthcare debate. Most of the cuts to Medicaid do not begin until 2026, and that will be a fight ahead. The Indian Health Service has a huge stake in the Medicaid outcome because roughly 40% of its patients are covered by that program, accounting for about 2/3 of IHS third-party revenue. One final note, I mentioned that Democrats have few levers. If Republicans really get frustrated, they have the power to change the rules of the debate. They could end the filibuster in the Senate and move any legislation, including their budget plan, with just a majority vote. But that still means Democrats can win the political battle and campaign on restoring the credits, then go to bat for Medicaid. Or they can lose this debate and then win the votes for millions of people who can no longer afford insurance. You want to know the crazy part of all this? The rest of the world has figured it out. Universal health care is less expensive for taxpayers than the maze of a system that we have now. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, healthcare expenditures per person in the United States were $13,432 in 2023. That's more than $3,700 more than any high-income nation. The average amount spent per person in comparable countries is $7,393, about half of what the U.S. spends per person. Obamacare came about because so many feared universal health care coverage, but there is no private sector incentive to make health care affordable. But spreading the costs as widely as possible is a framework that is sustainable. No wonder we fight over the nonsense parts. Something to make me angry now as I shop for my new insurance plan. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching. If you're interested in this content, be sure to share, comment, or subscribe. I'm Mark Trahant, and this is Breaking History.